Hello, everyone. Hi, Dr. Smita. How are you?
Hi, thank you for having me.
Thanks for being here.
We are very glad that you are here. Yes.
There's so much we could cover. Oh my gosh. But like I said in the introduction, we have Dr. Smita, who's a pediatrician and author of the Newborn Handbook.
Do you have a copy of the book near you, Brandy?
Do I? I got like
Excellent. Okay.
Oh,
I love that.
We won't necessarily
I
go
love that
into
it's
it.
tabbed
Well, I
up.
read it again.
you have like minutes.
Sorry, was that embarrassing? I don't
I remember.
know.
It's amazing.
It's amazing. That's really touching.
Well, we will. Oh, this is why I carry this near me. Okay, it's just like the tissues. We get real in this. Don't mind the tabs. I read this during my second pregnancy after my second child was born because it was it was released in 2020, right? Something around there. I had to look back.
Yeah, it was released in 2020.
And I was ready for it because
in the
first
middle
of all,
of the pandemic.
yes, yep, because I have a panda baby, Sophia, panda, cuter than the other way. Yeah. But first of all, not only was I going to get this because, as we mentioned in the introduction, you're a friend of mine, but because it's so thin. Look at this, everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Not only
It's digestible. Yeah.
Yes. And you say that in the book. I have to mind you. And okay, bear with me, Dr. Smita, because I just love. I'm taking you back. I'm taking you back because you said here because it resonates, everyone, about but so basically it resonated with me because when I started Delivery Diaries, I was like, oh, I missed that chapter. Like in my experience, oh, I missed that chapter of NICU. Why didn't anyone tell me? Because my child was in NICU, full term. But, I didn't realize I was leaving the hospital without him after me being in the hospital for 4 days. And his pediatrician came in and said, Brandy, I'm sorry. He has to stay the whole 7 days for the full antibiotics to go through. So I was confused. I was like, what? I'm leaving the hospital without my baby? This is my firstborn, right? So that was the most traumatizing. Not even the NICU and the everything else, the cesarean. It was just leaving home without my baby. So in my experience was like, I missed that chapter. No one told me that. And I know as moms and expected moms, we don't expect to know everything. But at least in one of the parts of the book, you said, we can't read every chapter in the books, if anything, or we can't read a whole book, but at least let's make it digestible, or at least go to the index and then go to the parts that relate to you or that you want to learn about.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that. So I just wanted to take it back.
I mean, as new moms, we don't have time to read a book from beginning to end. I know, like when I delivered and had a baby as a pediatrician, even like when I had a question, I was like, I just want to find the answer. I don't want to read like a bunch of anecdotes and things like that to get to the answer. So yeah, the book was specifically made that you could just go to where the answer you were looking for, and that's why it's so short, because I know that you're not going to be reading a book while you're taking care of a newborn from start to finish. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah, because also the book, so the guide to bringing home baby for our listeners and viewers, specifically from 0 to 3 months. So that's what makes this unique, also.
Yeah.
Because these books that have come out, they're like this big, and then there's parts that can scare you. Like, I don't want to read about.
Yeah. What to expect when you're expecting? It's like a textbook.
And and there's parts that don't relate to you, or diseases that you have to look to.
And you're like, and it's got a lady in a rocking chair on the front of it. I'm like, whose life is that? Because that is not my life. No offense. Great information, but
this is just a little bit. It's just like maybe a clip
whose life is that?
short version, you know.
Cliff's Notes, yeah.
Well, for those of us who are old enough to know what that is, there's a lot of people that are like, "What?"
Yeah, it's the Chat GPT version.
Yeah, the younger mommies
listening. The shorter version of what you're looking for, right?
Yeah. Okay. So, how do you two know each other? And Randy, I feel like you've told me.
Her cousin Sunil is a good friend from college at Boston College. He was like a big brother, like, you know, protective, obviously, but don't know. He's like, likes to control some things, but like in a good way.
Yes, he was my overprotective big brother that I never had. And I was in medical school. And I had this like little time off. And so I just come to stay with Sunil for a while. After that, I moved to New York City.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, it was kind of a transition period of my life. And Sunil was, of course, very concerned about me all the time.
He's also a doctor, Sunil. He's in med school, yeah.
And so, yeah, I just loved your but your group of friends, family from Boston College. They're all so close and loving and sweet. So
thank you.
It was just really great.
Yeah, that was special. So then at his wedding in Pittsburgh, we all gathered there after graduating, and so that was a nice little reunion. Yeah, and then when Smita moved here, with your husband at the time, right? And then,
here being Los Angeles.
Sorry, Los Angeles. Yeah, I was like, I know you. I know, hi. Yeah, I know, because of course, you know, friends and then from another part of your life on the East Coast. And like I said, she's a great photographer. Eventually, when you make your own autobiography, you'd be like this creative doctor. Not all doctors are stereotypically. You know, like
I've done very weird things in my life.
Trust me, I have an eclectic background myself. I actually do believe that there in the multiverse somewhere there is a version of me that is out delivering babies and helping women and all that stuff. So
deliveries are so beautiful.
Oh, I know. I'm going to get into that too with you. But then just briefly, because I know if you listen to some of our episodes, then, you know, that's where I was inspired. Obviously, I had a hard postpartum experience as far as mental, you know, postpartum depression snuck up on me a couple of years later. And then so the whole thing was like, but my experience was like, I had that one girlfriend that told me about the diapers, or me, the underwear. How come one girlfriend had the honesty to tell me what the real stuff, right? Not just the baby preparation stuff. So I appreciated that. And then
I did. Yeah. I actually thought about that going through the book. I'm like, oh my God, she talks about this.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Amazing. Yeah.
We're going to get into that. Yeah. So you're our first expert, actually, meaning professional expert, because obviously a lot of podcasts. Yeah. We're ready. Second season. So many people have experts, if you will, on podcasts or interviews, but ours is different because you're going to share your experience too, not just giving out information. Yeah. You know, that I think that's the beautiful part of, you know, because then it's more relatable and, you know, people can see doctors or jewelers, anyone that we
going
come
through
on.
The experience changed me
in the book. Yeah. I know. I know. Well, for people obviously that want to learn more and know more. So I got ahead of ourselves, but yes, let's start with how long you've been a pediatrician and what inspired you. And then of course, how it directly relates to you then being a mom. So
great question. So I've been a pediatrician for more than 15 years. Kind of feel old when I say that. But you know, I don't feel that old.
Like, how old are we?
I mean, Brandy, you and I met when we were in our 20s.
Yes.
You know, and I still feel that way.
Well, and like I talked to my mom. My mother's 85, and she's like, I don't know how I have children in their 50s. Like she just, you know, because she doesn't feel 85.
Yeah.
Like she. So
yeah.
Yeah. So I get
when
it.
They say age is just a number,
It's
because my mindset is young at heart. You know, so I've been a pediatrician for more than 15 years. You know, I really went into medicine because I was fascinated with science and the human body, and I knew I wanted a career that made an impact in that way. But I always knew I loved children. Like, I feel like when you're in a career that is directly working with children, you're changing the future. And like that's I didn't even have to question what I wanted to do when I went to medical school. I knew it would be
Wow.
pediatrics, like before I even entered, because I just I wanted to affect the next generation, and really take care of the next generation. And because I thought, well, I believe that that is, where I could make the biggest impact. And so, yeah, it's been my calling. And writing this book, actually, I never actually thought I would write a book about newborns. Like I never thought I would. But but actually, like I said in the book, becoming a mother changed me as a pediatrician. I have many pediatrician friends who have not had children, who are wonderful, amazing pediatricians. But personally, for me, it changed me as a pediatrician, and that's what inspired me. That's what inspired me to write the book.
So I'd like to dig into that a little bit more. So I mean, it's like the statement makes sense, right? That it would change you, but in what aspect specifically did, like, okay, so you went through this process of having children, right? And then at like your first appointment back after having your baby, like that's sort of where I'm interested. Like, what is that? What in real life, what does that look like for you? That it changed you, that it
Oh,
changed your practice.
a lot of times I was like, what was I saying? There's a lot of things, that, very valid advice that we give, that we learn as pediatricians. But, like when you say, like, sleep when the baby sleeps, honestly, as a mother, like when your baby is sleeping, I realized, like, oh my God, that's when I can like clean this, clean that. There is just so much going on in your head. It's not so easy to just sleep
Yeah.
when the baby sleeps,
Yeah.
or I actually thought, because I did residency where we worked 24-hour shifts, that, oh, I can stay up all
Mm.
night with a baby. Like, what's the big deal? Like,
Hmm.
but the difference is that when you're a resident, you get to sleep the next day after a 24-hour shift. As a parent, you have no days off.
Nope.
Hashtag no days off.
Yeah.
So it just hit me like all of these parents, not just mothers, parents, mothers, dads, guardians, caregivers,
Hmm.
they're functioning on no sleep all night, and then
Yeah.
they're here in my doctor's office taking
Mm.
care of babies the next day.
Yeah.
And so, like, it made me have a different kind of compassion
Mm-hmm.
and
That makes sense.
empathy and understanding to
Mm-hmm.
what they were going through. And
Well,
it really, like, I thought about my own child. I thought about my own experience. Like when they were telling me about feeding, I was like, oh, I remember this. Yeah.
I have
So
this.
it was different.
I have this part that this is what I found. You said I was able to give medical advice with a different kind of understanding, one that comes from the shared experience of new parenthood. And parents, we can feel, we know that, we sense that when we do have, and of course, this is of no offense to any other doctors, because it's just when you're a parent, it just clicks. Like you can even just look at another parent who's a doctor and they get it without
Mm-hmm.
like a word.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My
But yeah, that makes
OBGYN helped me figure out what school Sebastian was going to go. Like
yeah.
that's the
See, yeah,
conversations we
yeah,
had in the
Yeah.
office. Yeah.
yeah.
I love
And
that because you just have that shared trust and understanding.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
your practice too, and this was before kids, you integrated a holistic way of practicing, or is that a way of saying it? Or
Yeah.
can you explain more about that?
It was like kind of, so it would be helpful to share. It took me a long time to get pregnant. My journey to getting pregnant was 5, 6 years of trying. And so it took a huge toll on me. And so I started to investigate other avenues of kind of taking care of my body and my mind, and kind of exploring everything I could to make this a possibility for me. So I started exploring mindfulness, meditation,
Mm-hmm.
acupuncture, yoga. You know, like when people are like, maybe it's this, maybe it's this, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
So I started going into this journey, and I found a great acupuncturist who helped me in my journey for fertility, and she got me into really thinking about how our minds are so deeply connected to our bodies. I
Mm-hmm.
wish this was taught in medical school, which is kind of
Mm-hmm.
my goal. I want it to be to really talk about that mind body connection.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized that a lot of the ailments, you know, especially like not extensive, but simple ailments that children deal with, like constipation, abdominal pain, headaches, a lot of that is related to what's going on in their mind. And so through that journey, you know, through mindfulness, meditation, acupuncture, yoga, you know, at that time we created a practice that combined all of that for pediatrics,
Wow.
Wow.
and that was really really life changing for me, because I saw in real time how that changed the life of children. You know, even like when we had
Mm.
our like office visits, when people would come in, they come from like, oh, like hours and hours of traffic to come to our office. The first 10, not the first, the first minute, we would start with a mindful minute where it was just like, it's awkward at first, but it's like, we just, we just sit in silence and just keep our eyes closed and just
Mm.
breathe in and out.
That's
Breathe.
That's
Yes, breath.
impressive considering the
Yeah.
pace at which, insurance companies and all that, like the
Yes,
15-minute turnover
agreed,
um for appointments and all of the things that like you're pushed to do from, you know,
agreed. So
the
this is
medical
not
world. So,
conducive to
mhm.
the system we have in place in America right now.
Mm.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I think it's so important. And so we would just sit quietly for that mindful minute, and then we would start the visit. And it totally
Mhm.
shifts the perspective. Everyone's calmer, everyone's different. But we had parents coming back to us saying, you know, we started this before our board meetings. We start this before our executive
Wow.
meetings. A whole police department started doing this, like because we one of the police officers brought his son to our office. Like
I was gonna
it
say,
just
wow,
it
the
just
ripple
really
effect.
you know, and I was just like, wow, like this is really and then I saw children who realized like, oh yeah, you know what? I'm constipated because, you know, I'm trying to play football because my dad wants me to play football and I don't want to. And
Mm.
like when you explain
Wow.
that to the parent, then all of these things go away. Like, you know, it really just explains how those our mind and body are so deeply connected, and mental health is health. Mental
Yeah.
health
Mm-hmm.
and physical health are totally together. And so that's what changed that perspective for me. And sorry, this was a really long-winded way of me saying, you know, like that's how that practice came
That's
to be.
amazing. Well, I hope that you're right. I hope that the medical community gets on board. There's so much research now being done with, especially with like deep meditators, the monks and the Tibetan monks and the priests and everybody, about like what happens in your brain when you meditate, right? Like even for that minute, Audrey's school actually did that. My daughter's school actually did that when they were, I think, starting like second grade.
Hmm.
They would do they would do a mindful minute, or they would do like these like coping mechanisms. It's amazing. I mean, it's amazing.
Yeah, I mean,
So
the studies have shown, like, you know, your amygdala, which is important in emotional regulation in your brain, and the prefrontal cortex, which is for impulse control, these things actually change with meditation. Like your brain
Mm-hmm.
is rewired, restructured with meditation, or mindfulness, or you know, however you choose
whatever you
to.
want to call it, yeah, prayer, like yeah.
Right, right.
So no, oh man, that's so cool.
Sorry, I'm just looking up the happiest baby on the block. That was excuse me. This is why. Oh, so Dr. Harvey Karp, the happiest baby on the block, the happiest toddler on the block for
Mm-hmm.
us. That worked for us by Dr. Harvey Karp because we love science, Brian and I. And so the study of, and I love studying the brain. So obviously when we had Sebastian, I loved in the book how obviously babies, kids, toddlers, and there's happiest toddler on the block doesn't know how to communicate yet. And so he used the Flintstones analogy, bam, 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 bam. Why do you think Bam Bam has this club and just go bam, bam, bam? It's because he's trying to communicate. And so we say when Sebastian's being bam, bam, we taught him at a young age, just breathe, calm down,
Right.
Mm-hmm.
take a breath. And we use that to this day. He's 7 years old.
Oh, we do a 6 seconds. Take your
Yeah.
6 seconds.
Yeah.
Right.
So I'm
Of,
glad
like,
we learned that.
like, so, but it's so fascinating. We did attachment parenting, and I was really glad to see that in the book. Like, we did attachment parenting early on because my husband was going to be the stay-at-home parent. So when she was 10 weeks old, I went back to work. And so that the attachment with both of us during the during maternity leave was so important. So I was so happy to see that in your book, that was like, here are the ways you can parent. So
Yeah. I went back to work at 10 weeks for both of my kids.
Mm-hmm.
And they went to a daycare. And
for both,
it was
yeah.
incredibly hard.
It's hard.
Yeah.
And that's one thing I wish this country offered more is parental leave, paid.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But it was incredibly heart-wrenching. But I did do everything possible I could to keep that attachment with my kids. And it was worth it.
All right,
Yeah.
so we're going way back to
Yeah.
postpartum now. Let's go back
Anyway.
to no.
Yeah.
But no, but this is great because I love just getting connected with each other. So then, okay, so and also, Dr. Smita, I'm going to learn new things about you, obviously too. This is real time. So you had about 5 years. You were trying to get pregnant, and then you went a holistic journey, if you will. And then, can you share then? Voila, you got pregnant, or how did that journey happen?
So I think it was really a shift in my mind. I attribute a lot of it to, when I started acupuncture, it just kind of released something in me. I became a little bit more willing to go with the flow of whatever life had to offer for me without putting so much pressure on what I wanted. And as soon as I let go, I got pregnant. Not to say that, it didn't come with a lot of difficulties. Both my pregnancies were very difficult. And I did have a miscarriage in between. But I realized, like, a lot of it was just, I knew I would have a baby somehow, whether it was naturally, whether it was adoption, whether, whatever method I did, I knew it would happen somehow. And as soon as I let that go, I became pregnant. And I think it took a lot of self-reflection and a mind shift in myself, and really I don't want to make this religious or anything, but really a spiritual journey, that I went on. So I think that's really what changed everything for me.
Yeah, thanks.
And
for
what's the
sharing
time
that.
span between your kids? 3 years?
3 years.
Okay. That's thank you. Yeah. And spirituality is a lot of it, right? For some people. Not for everybody, but for some people it's like you're bringing a human being into the world. That human being, no matter, like, whatever you believe, that human being has an energy of its own, right? Like, so,
Right.
I'm a firm believer that there were people beyond the veil who helped pick my kid's soul out for me, right? Because, like, that's my belief.
I fully believe it. I fully believe
that,
that
yeah.
my kids' souls were ready to come when I became ready myself.
Yep.
And so they were
Yeah.
like, all right, you're ready now. So I will come.
Yes, I think that's
So
great for our listeners and viewers to hear that, though, right? I think that's
yeah,
very
and you
helpful.
know what?
Yeah.
I was ready. I knew my kid would come in whatever form, whether I adopted my child, whether I had my child naturally, whether,
Mm-hmm.
I knew that that soul was going to come to me in some way.
Yeah, and we if you listen to the first season of our podcast, like there's a lot of that. Stephanie's story with Grace and like the connection of their beings,
Their
right? Because
adoption
that's an adoption
story.
story, and
Mhm.
the car accident with Jeff, like right, like that
Mark
she
and
had that,
Jeff,
like when the
their
baby was, yeah,
surrogate,
with Mark
yeah.
and Jeff, like yeah, like it's so much. So like
Divine
there's just so much of
intervention,
that, like it's
and yeah.
something.
Well, we're like,
I
however
believe
your
that.
baby's
Yeah,
delivered, let's just do it.
right.
Delivery diaries, yeah.
And
However your
that's
baby.
actually in my book, even I write, however your child came into your life. Like the book was
Yes.
really about all families, whether the
Hmm.
families have two dads, two moms,
Mm,
one mom, one dad, whether you adopted, you're a caregiver, however a
Yes.
family is made, it's valid. It's a
yep,
beautiful family.
yep. That's
Hmm. I
awesome.
do. I
That's
appreciate how
how
you
we
said
feel too.
caregiver too, because again,
Hmm.
Mhm.
aunties or uncles have to raise other family members'
Yes.
kids, everything. Okay, so you have two children, so Sahana and
Yes.
Simi.
Yes. Hannah and
Sahana,
Simi.
and I know we could go to town with both of them, but let's just focus on like how was then the birth of each child. Specifically, if there's anything you want listeners and viewers to hear from your story or share or to learn from.
So my first child, the birth was very, very quick. I had a scheduled C-section. Basically, I was informed that her head was very large and it would be a painful birth experience and would probably result
Wow.
in a lot of tearing. And
Yeah.
so, could cause some medical complications too. And so, I opted for the C-section, and so within like 8 minutes of the C-section starting, my child was born. It was beautiful. The
Wow.
birth experience was perfect. I recovered fine, and the second experience was a little bit more traumatic. Um, Again, when you've had one C-section, it is usually recommended that you have a repeat C-section and just for medical reasons. And so I said, I would have the C-section unless I delivered naturally before then. That's fine. So I had the C-section date planned, and we got to the date, and this can happen, but the anesthesia started wearing off during the C-section, so I started feeling
No.
my C-section going and the surgery happening, and with no fault of anybody, but it was very painful, and and the recovery was a little bit harder with the second C-section. So it didn't go as smoothly, but my
Yeah.
child, all I know is my child is safe. Everyone was fine. We all recovered, but it wasn't as seamless.
Textbook,
Okay,
right?
well, we
Like it
got to go
wasn't. Yeah,
back. We got to go back because
yeah.
I had two C-sections. So, and I know it's like you're lying on the slab. So, the second one, so when the anesthesia, when it was, okay, so when you felt something, I mean, could you lift your arm or could you communicate?
So
Was,
that's why I think it's important
because I know you're under,
for your listeners to really, when something is not right, say it. And I've always been that kind of person. Like I don't want to offend anyone. I don't want to
Mhm.
make anyone upset. But I knew, like, I was beginning to feel this in a very different way than I'd
Wow.
felt before. And, at that time, my husband at that time was sitting next to me. And I looked at him. He's also a physician. And I
Yeah.
was like, something is not right. And he knows, like, I have a high pain tolerance. So he was like, what do you mean? And I was like,
Mm.
I'm beginning to feel this. I'm beginning to feel this. Something is not right. And it took me literally 5-10 minutes to even be like, should I say anything?
Wow.
And I was
Oh
like,
my God.
no, I need to say something,
Are you guys listening to this? A doctor is asking herself, and this is not like personal. This is why it's important to advocate. Wow.
Because I've been such like a people pleaser all my,
Yeah.
like I just want everyone to feel okay. I don't want to offend anyone. But I was like, no, I have to say something. And so he let the anesthesiologist know, he let the OB know, they gave me more pain meds. It helped. It
Okay, good.
helped. Like it's nobody's fault, but it just
Excuse me.
reminded me that you need to be your best advocate. You need to be your most important advocate, because the doctors, they're doing the best they can, and they need to know when something is not right. They need to know when you need to when you are feeling something. That's important. And
Wow.
so I'm really glad I said something, because if I hadn't,
Oh my God.
That's another story. No, thank God you said something. And yeah, even if it took
Yeah,
you,
I mean, everything turned out fine.
of
The
course.
doctors
Yeah.
were excellent. Things happen, but you need to advocate for yourself when it happens.
That's great advice.
I'm glad that you said that, because it's so important, especially as women, and watching these stories of women of color specifically. Like Brandy and I talk about this all the time, like the negative health outcomes for women of color. Well, part of that is like history, right? Part of it's just like the implicit bias in our society, but part of it is like, are they being listened to? I mean, you're fortunate they listened, they took correction, but it's like, I just think about women in that situation where they're like, I can feel this. Like, how do you, like,
No one brushed it
I don't know.
off, and
I
like they
just,
listened to you.
no one
Yeah.
brushed it
Yeah.
off. Right.
Yeah, I mean, in my case, I was
Right.
listened to, I was taken care of.
Mm-hmm.
No one brushed it off. They
Yeah.
they were excellent, but I can imagine how tough it is when you're not being listened to.
Yeah. Like, could you imagine? I mean, it was just insane. But that's good. And good for you for speaking up. And so, and that was the first, no, that was the second prank.
That was the second. That's why
Okay.
she could feel the difference.
Yeah. That's why you knew.
Did you have a birth plan? And I'm asking as your personality, like you're talking about. You're a physician, type A. I don't know. You tell me.
I am a type A person.
Did you have a birth plan? Like a lit?
I
Like
did
a
not.
okay.
I did not, but and probably because of my experience in being in this field.
Yeah, yeah. That's why I'm asking
I feel
how
like
the
I feel like what you plan for never happens.
Never happened.
I didn't want to.
Yeah.
I didn't want to put my expectations here because it would just frustrate me. So
Mm-hmm.
my journey to getting pregnant, I said I will go with the flow of what happens, and I
Yeah.
will make sure that this is a safe pregnancy and delivery.
I had a 4-page birth plan.
I know Flo had a 4-page. I had a 2-liner.
but
Say healthy mommy, healthy baby.
Right. But
That's all I wanted.
Ultimately, my birth plan was like, okay, so this is what we want to happen. But if this doesn't happen, here are the things that we want to happen. If a plan doesn't happen,
that's why I heard. But it's a logistics.
Right?
Her and I were like this. Me and Flo go like this.
It's totally logistics. It's like, okay, so this is what we're going for. No meds, no blah blah blah, no blah blah blah. But if something happens and I have to have a C-section, it literally says that if there's this is what we want.
That's great.
No, the baby's never alone with medical professionals without parent there. Like, just boom, boom, boom. Explaining to the nurses the relationship between me and my husband, like the fact that we are partners and everything, and like this is what we're doing, and so it wasn't even like a plan so much as it was like,
it was a letter. It was a love letter.
If A, then B.
Hello, nurses. Hello, staff.
Yes, I did. I did. I brought them cookies.
You
know, it was
I'm sure they love that. So.
Yes.
Yeah, and then but like you said, nothing goes to plan. Like,
I just know from being in that field,
Yeah, sure.
And I'm not saying you have to be type A, but just the logistics, and of course you've seen it, or you've seen that, you've been there around, as your, as a doctor. But I wasn't the birth plan list person. I was the hospital bag list. So
super
Dr.
important.
Smita has a list to help you in her book. I love the hospital bag. I bought a special bag. This new mama's getting a new expensive bag for her hospital. But yeah, the prenatal
Yeah.
and getting ready, I thought that was helpful that you put the hospital bag list of what to expect.
Mhm. I mean, that's where I'm type A, where it's like when it comes to packing and and making sure I
Yep,
have everything on my list that I could possibly need.
me too.
Yeah, the hospital bag, like I made that list like maybe 5 months into my pregnancy. I'm like, this is what I'm gonna need
Oh,
for
I
the
was
birth.
preparing. Oh yeah, it
I'm
was
like, make
That's
sitting
sure
next
those
to my
awesome.
things don't
bed.
miss.
Yes. I was ordering
Awesome.
things to make
So
sure it got in time before I delivered, like
yeah,
a
before I
robe.
delivered, I mean, I had a whole new robe, like I had a
Yes.
whole like outfit,
Highly recommend if that's in the cards
I
for people get a
love
new
it.
robe.
That feels
oh
Right?
soft.
yes,
So
That's
that it's so that
comfortable.
and that is
I had the
special.
slippers, like I had my
Yes.
fashion
Yeah.
on point. Like
Yes. Why
I
not?
even had lashes on when I
Oh my god.
was like
Oh my
that.
god.
Like,
It's
You
just
were ready
but
for
that's
those
like
pictures. You knew those pictures were
love
coming.
that.
But they don't tell you that, right? We don't know these things, especially
Mhm.
our older generation. We're like, what? We're not camera ready. Now we are when we have our baby.
I'm like I'm gonna make myself as comfortable as possible. you know.
I love it.
And if
Yes.
lashes make you comfortable, good for you. Right? Like that's the thing. It's like and I think that that's sort of for Brandy and I kind of also the bent is like you got to be you, man.
Yeah.
You
Mm-hmm.
know, you got to be you. And it is and it's I talk about this and I've talked about this before, with on the podcast is like it's in so many ways we've lost our village, right? And
Agreed.
and
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
like as humans, like as women and we've birthed, I don't know, 16 billion humans over the course of humanity's existence or something like some crazy amount of people and before modern day like we had core groups of women who took care of women, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think we're seeing that more now that there are more women in the medical profession. I know that all of my doctors are women. My husband's primary is a woman. I think it makes a difference.
I think it depends on bedside manner. You know, I think
Mm-hmm.
I have a lot of great male colleague pediatricians who
Sure.
are really some of the best pediatricians I know. But really, it depends on how much, you know, even a man or a female understands the experience and has compassion and empathy for what new parents are going through. When you talk about village, I think that is one thing that affected me the most.
Yeah.
We live in a society where we are very isolated,
Mhm.
especially those people that gave birth during the pandemic. I can't even
Mm,
imagine how isolating that was. And Brandy, you were one of them,
very.
but
Yeah.
but like but like to not have. So when I gave birth, it was just me and my children's dad at the time. There was just nobody else.
Yep.
And it's really, really, really isolating and difficult when you can't rely on anyone else. When it's just the two sleep deprived parents
Yep.
that have to take care of the children. And I remember growing up, I had my parents, I had my grandparents, I had my
Mm-hmm.
aunts, I had my
Same here.
uncles. Like all these people pitched in to take care of me.
Mm-hmm.
And that is one thing I would tell new parents is that build your village. It is life saving. It is essential.
Yes.
Essential.
It's essential.
Essential. Build your village and reach out to them and lean on them and be there for each other, because that's what's going to keep you going.
Yeah, thanks for that. Because and I've shared this before, and I'll keep saying it again. Because I knew myself as a very social person. So when as a first time mommy, I learned about the village just living away from home since college, right? My hometown in Florida. I grew up with a lot of cousins, aunts, and uncles too. But I was like, I have to build this mommy village before he's even born, because I just know myself. I have to be around people that want to help. I even, and everyone listening too, even be open to people that you never thought would help or be there for you that want to be there for you. And so
Mhm.
you'd be
Mhm.
surprised, pleasantly surprised. So I created my village, and that definitely helped me. Yeah. So that's a great
Mhm.
segue to postpartum. You have your two beautiful kids, your babies. So is there anything, well, in the book you did share you had, well, you can start where you want to start in postpartum, but I know you shared that you had trouble breastfeeding at first, but you can start sharing anything you want first.
Yeah. So breastfeeding for both kids did not go well for me. As a pediatrician, we are trained that, you should breast is best. You should breastfeed as long as you can. And so that's, what I was telling parents, breastfeed as long as you can. Breastfeeding is best. And when it just did not work for me, and it was just such a struggle, and I took it so personally, like
Mm,
um, it just affected me to a different degree. Like this was my first failure, as a
mm,
mother, and I think I just I began to like really look into like what kind of pressure are we putting on people, on new mothers to
mm,
breastfeed. I mean, I love that mothers can breastfeed. I love that they're breastfeeding for long periods of time. But for those mothers that cannot, like, there is no reason to put that guilt trip on somebody, because that just makes them not emotionally available for their children.
mm-hmm,
You are directly affecting their children when you guilt a mother who cannot breastfeed. Um, so I let go of that kind of pressure on myself. My kids, to be very honest with everyone, both of my kids were breastfed for probably a month, and then I had to go to formula feeding.
mm-hmm.
And I am a fully formula fed child myself.
Same
Yeah,
here.
right.
I just
Yeah,
learned that from my
same here.
mom when I was pregnant.
Yeah,
I
no,
know.
and like, look, I was born.
I didn't even know that.
I was born in '68. I was born in '68, and that's the point at which they were pushing, formula over breast milk a lot, for whatever reason. And my mom grew up on a farm, and she milked cows as a young girl, and she's like, I don't want to be anybody's milk cow. She was a professional, like
Mhm.
so she had a work life and all this other stuff, and so it's, so I was 100%, I
Yeah,
think.
and I think yes, okay, breast milk has so many benefits, and it's wonderful
Hmm.
and it's beautiful, and you should breastfeed if you can breastfeed,
Right.
but there's so many different families out there, okay? There's
Hmm.
families with two dads.
Right.
Mm-hmm,
There's no breast milk, okay?
Hmm.
And there's so many different families out there, so we can't shame everyone that cannot breastfeed.
Right.
Those children who are formula fed will turn out okay as well.
Just fine. Yeah. And especially now, formula is so much, like, it's just every year it gets better and better and better. The formulas and the vitamins and the nutrition and the formula
Right,
is
right.
just, it's
Can you
amazing.
can you
Yeah,
share
so
different
once I let that guilt go, it was great. Go
can you
ahead.
share different reasons why some women are unable to breastfeed? Obviously, low in milk, or
Yeah, I mean, some women just have low milk production. Sometimes there is depression going on, which
mm-hmm,
can definitely affect the milk production. Sometimes there's medical complications.
mm-hmm.
Sometimes there's social complications. I mean, there's so many different reasons, and sometimes
They just want to
we don't
stop.
know. You're
Yeah.
just not making as much milk, and the body just stopped, and that's fine also. And there's
Mm-hmm.
nothing wrong with you. This does not mean that you are a failure as a parent, that you're going to be a bad parent. It means nothing about your parenting.
Right.
Um,
Absolutely.
yeah,
Amen.
it's just a circumstance, and trust me, any new parent that is struggling with this right now, trust me, when your child is like 9 and 10, you are not going to.
It's not
You
going
are.
to make any difference. Yeah.
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 Yeah, and I have
So
moms that just
yeah,
didn't want to breastfeed
we can.
anymore.
Yep.
Yeah, some
Yep.
just like I
Yeah,
don't want
and
to
there's
breastfeed it.
also some moms that
Yeah.
don't want to, and that is okay as well.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's totally fine.
Yeah.
So you should just support every parent in whatever stage they're at, because they're just doing the best that they can.
That's right.
Thanks for sharing that. Anything on your end? Because
No,
I got
I'm
tabs
good.
flowed,
I know
but
you got a lot of questions. I know you got tabs. I mean, so
We
one
can
of
go
the
back
things I
to
did
our
want to bring up,
sheet.
and I don't know if you know, I don't know if you know about this. So in Finland, there's a baby box. Are you aware? Do you know about the baby box? I think every country on the planet should do this. Like, I think this is the most amazing thing
I'm
ever.
aware of it, but
Yeah. So a Finnish woman like gets pregnant, whatever, and then a box shows up at her house with basically like pajamas and a blanket and some other things, and then the box itself can be turned into a bassinet that can be in the room with the parent. So it's a separate space, but in the room, and it's brilliant because it's the basic necessities. And I get there's probably a handbook or something because that's how Finnish people roll. But it's just like it's so smart, and that like when I was reading your book, I'm like, yeah, this is why the Finns do this, is because this is how they became that what the 6 years running the most content people on the planet
The
is
happiest, yeah.
because they're taken care of. Yeah, I lived there for a year. They're content. They enjoy their lives.
Well, that's
I would
right.
love to
yeah,
be content too. I
or
love
the
that.
Right.
happiest.
But it
Like
goes
it's
back
just
to like being the
yeah,
village, right?
yeah,
Like it's like when you have a society that considers itself a village, taking care of each other.
yeah.
Maybe I feel like that's probably what Finland has.
It's egalitarian at its core, right? Like that's really part of what it is, and it would be lovely if we could get to that space.
I mean, I would love that. I mean, what a
Yeah.
beautiful society.
I mean, that's why we have
Yeah.
doctors
So
like you, and that's why we have delivery diaries
that's
to
right.
keep sharing stories. And the reason why we want to keep sharing stories is to grow more empathy and compassion and understanding. A couple things before we sign off that I have. So helpful, this book. Can you can you share anything else about let's see. Oh, so we're in the postpartum stage. Uh, you emphasize a lot about, well, how was it for you? Like, obviously you're sharing in this book, like go outside, make sure you even share about, which I love, when people visit the baby, find out what your needs are too as a mom, because sometimes people just want to come in, let me see the baby. And you're like, hi, I'm the mom that just gave birth. Can I, or just I have this newborn. I'm right here. Can you help me? Was that like that for you, or how can you just share where that came from, or obviously hearing from other parents
Um,
probably?
yeah. So I would say, my postpartum experiences both time was really isolating and lonely. Their dad had to go back to work. Paternity leave was what, 5 days
Yeah.
for him. So he went right back to work, and so I was going back to work in 10 weeks. So that 10 weeks was just me alone
Wow.
with my children.
Yeah.
And when I had my second child, it was like the first and the second, like trying to take care of a newborn and a little toddler. So it was really isolating and lonely, just being in charge of everything in the house by myself, and keeping two little kids alive at the same time. Um, so when people came over, when I had visitors, I became really cognizant of the fact that, I cannot entertain you. My instinct is to take care of people when they come to my house, because that's my culture, right? Like
Yeah.
in Indian culture, like when you come to our house, you are like taken care of as the guest.
Yes.
And I just couldn't do that as a new mom. And so when they came over, I really did request that, hey, when you come over, can you watch my kids so I can take a shower? That would be really
Yeah.
helpful, because I
Oh,
haven't
of
showered in
course.
like 3 days.
Yes.
Well, and I don't know if you
Yes.
experienced this, but most people are like, "Yes, of course I'll help you."
And you don't
Right?
realize, like, that's what they want to do. Like
Yeah.
they just need the encouragement,
The
And
instructions,
so,
encouragement. Yeah. What to do. Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, and be like, hey, can you bring over something like that my kids could eat for dinner? Like, and they're like, oh my God, of course. Like it's just like people want to help, but they're probably scared of ask or telling you or asking you to not offend you.
Yeah.
But if you ask for the help, they're willing to give it. And so, especially the second time around, I became really open with asking for the help and saying, "Hey, I know you want to visit the baby. Okay, but please, can you watch them while I take a shower, while I do this?" Like, and
I leave the house for 20
more
minutes,
than
like
willing,
whatever.
Get some
everyone
fresh
was more
air.
than willing to be helpful.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah,
that's great
everyone was more
advice.
than
Yeah.
willing. Or even like, you want to come over, but can we go for a walk so I can like be outside for a second? Things like that.
Great, great. And one of my also biggest one of my part of my story, which I don't think we talk a lot about in society, let alone with women, is I'm telling you, you guys, listeners, viewers, get this book. Page 87. You're grieving your old life.
Yeah.
Oh my, yes.
And I think there's something to be said when we talked about earlier in this interview is having children older when you're older. Meaning my hometown had like 20s, early 20s. That's the life they've led. But then when you're in your mid 30s, late 30s, you've had this whole career, mind you, or this whole life living this life. And then bam, suddenly you're a mom with kids. So can you speak more on that, how that affected you? I'm going to say something here. Ready? You said it's normal to feel a sense of loss for the life you had before. It's normal to feel overwhelmed with responsibility. Any parent can feel this way. Can you speak more about that?
Yeah, it just, when I guess I had these dreams when I had my children, like that I could still maintain this sense of spontaneity about my life and just take my kids along.
Yeah.
And then when you have the children, you realize, oh my God, there's like diapers, there's snacks, there's like, like feedings.
You have to bring luggage wherever you go.
Like, when do you do all of these things? Like when you're being spontaneous, and then you're tired, you haven't slept. And so it was just that transition. It was just, it hits you in the face, and it takes a while to adjust to it. I also went through postpartum depression both times with my children, and that's something I did not expect, and especially as a physician, I see this all the time, but like even for me, it was so hard to reach out for help when I was feeling those kinds of feelings with the loss of my own, like a lot of it had to do with this loss of like my life that I had before and how was I adjusting to it. So I think it's important to understand that your life will never be the same. It's not going to be how it was before. Like it's just, you just let that part go, but it's going to be a whole new beautiful mess going forward. It's a beautiful mess, and you're going to adjust to it, and it's going to be, it's going to be the greatest adventure of your life. You just have to change your perspective on how you're dealing with it. So yeah, that's why I tell new parents, because I love when I see prospective parents talk about like how we're going to do this with our kids and this with our. I love that, but it's going to change.
Right.
Like there's so many different things that are going to happen, and you have to adjust your perspective a little bit, because children definitely bring that to your life. So yeah,
That's great. Yeah.
I know you went through postpartum, right, Brandy?
I did. Yes. That again, that again inspired Delivery Diaries because I wanted to remind myself I'm not the only one that was going through that. And then when the timing started happening again with my second child, I definitely reached out to my doctors and my community again and just tried to create a different environment for myself because I didn't want to go back down to that same path I did with my first child. Obviously, as a doctor, you know, it's just how the brain and my chemistry and everything was rewired, right? And chemicals and the happy serotonin and everything got back. But
Our body's hormones keep shifting. We built a whole new life inside of us.
yes.
Yes. You ate food and made a human.
Yeah, again,
right? Like
that
that's,
part,
you know,
yeah,
and
not talked about a lot, right? We're like preparing the
yeah,
baby, preparing the nursery. Oh, let
yeah,
me prepare our bodies and our mind.
yeah,
Yes,
you know, and like, and things happen, you know, like, I mean, some women lose teeth. My thyroid stopped working
hair.
correctly. You know, like all of this stuff happens, right? And our predecessors, you know, a lot of them, they, you know, herbal medications and, you know, herbal like teas and stuff like that, like they had a lot of other things that they did. We've got Lexapro and and other, you know,
Mhm.
it's like, it's just different generations have different things to deal with it. And but it's I don't know, it's all pretty miraculous to me, you
Yeah.
know. And so
Have your
I,
favorite unsolicited advice, Dr. Smita?
there you go, there you go.
I think
I
I've
say
given a lot of advice during this
unsolicited
time.
air quotes because we get that a lot.
Hmm.
Unsolicited. I would say like there is no such thing as a perfect parent.
Hmm.
There is honestly, I don't think there's anyone who can call themselves a parenting expert.
I love that. I love that in your book, and I love that whole concept of like there's no such thing, right?
We are all learning as we go,
Yeah.
Hmm.
and we really just share the advice that we learn together, and just really take it all in. And just because you aren't perfect at every moment as a parent does not make you a bad parent. That's what I would
That's
say.
right.
Give
Well, and
yourself grace.
we as you know, I say this to our team, like perfection is the enemy of good or great, right? Like trying to be perfect can actually be detrimental.
True.
What I heard you say was give yourself and others grace. I think you said
Yeah,
that,
give
but
Yeah,
yourself grace. Your child, if your child is happy and loved, that's what matters.
oh, then
That's what
speaking
matters.
of, is there anything you like to say about your children? Just
Um, they are the most beautiful beings that
mm,
are really taking me on a amazing journey every day, and I'm thankful for them. So,
mm.
yeah.
Well, we're thankful for you. Thank you for sharing your delivery diary with us. We really
thank
appreciate
you.
it.
Thank you for having me.